If you follow the goings-on in the service BDC and fixed ops world online, Sarah Vantine needs no introduction. After making the Automotive News 40 Under 40 list in 2018, Sarah's career trajectory resembles something launched by NASA. But how did she get here? With 2 art degrees in hand, the 2008 financial crisis caused Sarah, like so many others, to make a career pivot. And this pivot involved pulling up to a Dodge dealership and applying for a sales job. With an "I have every right to be here" mantra, Sarah entered the male-dominated industry, endured slings and arrows, and challenged the status quo.
Hi, I'm Sarah Vantine. I'm Vice President of the Fixed Ops Roundtable and automotive industry expert in all things BDC.
Okay, Sarah, so if you just want to give an intro, brief intro.
Hi, I'm Sarah Vantine. I'm the Vice President of the Fixed Ops Roundtable and automotive industry expert in all things BDC.
Awesome. I want to get into your backstory. Tell us about young Sarah, little Sarah, and the dreams that she had as far as career, and and then just keep going.
Perfect. Yeah. So I was not the person that wanted to be in the auto industry as a young child or even into college. My entire focus, I've always been into the arts and very passionate about drawing. And I envisioned that I would go work for a gallery or help curate museum exhibitions or do field research. Those were the things that I felt, professional Sarah, when I was going to college and considering art degrees. My parents weren't exactly thrilled with that choice. They felt like I should go into business or do something a little more practical in their point of view. And I really wanted to pursue the arts. That was what I was most passionate about. And of course, in 2008, everything changed. And so one of the things that I found myself in as somebody that was finishing up 2 bachelor's degrees, one in studio art and one in art history, the College Career Center told me, look, Sarah, there's people that have PhDs right now that are getting unpaid internships just to get their foot in the door at colleges or universities or places. And here I was in college, about to finish my second bachelor's degree in 4 years. And it was really alarming to think about the prospect that I would go out into the world and not have a job or would have to do something different. And so, one of the pieces of advice that they gave me was, well, we are seeing so much competition in the space that we would recommend you take some time and get a PhD and pursue higher education and continue that path. Well, in looking at things, it didn't make a lot of sense to me at the time to go, well, why would I go and get a PhD in something when the people with PhDs today are struggling to compete in the industry or in the arts? And so it was kind of a rude awakening, and I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with my life at that point. So I was a little bit astray. And one of the things that happened, I was, I finished college at College of Charleston. I was getting ready to move back to Atlanta with my parents. I was going to come home and reevaluate for a year and think, okay, well, where do I go next? And something just hit me one day, and I didn't want to leave Charleston. And so I got in the car with a stack of resumes and drove up the street from my apartment and saw there was a sign outside of a Dodge dealership that said they were hiring for sales. And I just pulled my car right into the Dodge store, and that was the first start of the auto industry for me.
Was that jump from thinking you're doing one thing, going to school, planning for it, but then the realization that you're going to have to pivot? How scary was that, especially going into something like, I fell into the automotive. I delivered parts. I was a territory manager. I loved cars, but I like to look at them. That was about it. How scary was that for you?
Oh, it was so I had no support going into my decision to sell cars. And I mean, none at all. It was my mom was horrified from the jump when I told her, so I'm not going back to Atlanta. I'm going to stay in Charleston and I'm going to go work at a Dodge dealership selling cars. And she goes, Sarah, the auto industry. Oh my gosh, no. Why would you ever consider something like that? No, like car salesman, you don't want to be that. You don't want to be around that. And my dad kind of played the card of, well, you've made your decision, and so when it blows up in your face, you're an adult, and we'll see what happens to you. And so, going into that dealership too, I remember my first day, and I was excited. My first job and I'd had many jobs before, but always part time or working at various college jobs. So this was my first full time job, and going into the dealership, the first Monday morning sales meeting, I'm in there. There's all these. Really, it was only men at that time. I was the only woman in the sales meeting. And there was about 12 other people that had started at the same time as me. So during that time, they were doing a practice where they would mass hire a bunch of sales consultants and then see how people played out over 90 days and would gradually fire with the intention to keep maybe one or two, and that would be added to the staff and then rinse and repeat. You'd go right back to it, another 90 days later. So I'm in there and there's a lot of people. And I remember the general sales manager talking to us in, the Monday meeting and said, all right, you new people, we are not anticipating that most of y'all are going to make it here past 2 weeks. So we're not going to bother training y'all. We're going to let y'all figure it out. You can shadow we're going to pair you up with some salespeople and we're going to just see what you have. And if we think you're good, then we'll do some more formal training, but we're not going to do that yet. You're just going to have to see what happens. And so for me, that was really terrifying coming into something like that as a 22-year-old thinking, oh my gosh, what have I done? I've had first my parents telling me this was a mistake. I've had my friends questioning, why would you go sell cars? You don't know anything about cars. You don't maintain your car. You don't have any experience in cars. And, to then go into that first meeting and to be met with that as my first day of work, I questioned a lot of things about that decision. But one of the things that I really, maybe it's a good quality, maybe it's a bad quality, but one of the things is that I'm particularly, it's become a skill, I think, in this industry, but I'm very persistent. And so, that meeting, while it rattled me and it questioned me, it also gave me more resolve. And so I was a little more determined to be, okay, they're going to be weeding people out in the next couple weeks. I don't want to be in that group. And I had people, right out the sales meeting when I got paired up with some sales consultants. One of them told me, yeah, we got a pool going and we always do this with y'all when y'all newbies come in, and I got money that you're not going to make it 2 weeks. So I intend to collect on that bet. And that, to hear from an adult, professional when you're coming into the industry, that was a little bit jarring too. But, I think that the biggest change for me was once I was actually selling vehicles on my own. And I was realizing actually not knowing everything about cars was an advantage in the situation. Customers would come into the store, and when I would work with them, they'd ask me a question. Well, how does this navigation work? Do you know which package is on this car? And I'd say, no, I've only been here about a week and a half now, but I'd be happy let's go find out together. And customers found that refreshing. I think they found it, well, I was being honest in the conversation. I never tried to pretend to be something that I wasn't. And that first paycheck, when I got my commission check, I thought it was an error. I thought it was a complete mistake. I was like, no, there's no way that this is my bonus. I've never seen, a paycheck like that. And so that once that happened, I think it really drove me forward even further, because I realized, well, if this is the kind of money I could be making and this is the kind of opportunities that are here, I have every right to be here.
Yeah, my first instinct is to say, that was crap training. But sometimes that trial by fire stuff, I mean, it's up to you to do it. And sometimes that's the best training, they could give you.
Well, and it was really, so I have to be honest, one of the things that it was not something I'd ever been exposed to in my life when it came to training. Most things, it was very much like, all right, you're going to learn how to, clock in and clock out. You're going to learn how to do, reprice things in retail, clothing. You're going to learn where the stock is, or this is our process for bringing food out to the table. And so I'd been used to working a variety of different jobs in college where there was always some kind of formal training. But for them to be like, just shadow this person and figure it out on your own, it was something. There were a few days I remember coming into work and I would be sitting in my car, 10 minutes before my shift, just staring at my steering wheel, because I'm just having to like process like, okay, how is this day going to unfold today? What am I going to get yelled at for that I didn't know to do, but I did, and it wasn't correct? And, is that going to be the end of this job? And so there was a lot of nerves during that time, but you're right. I think it prepared me, I guess, in more ways than I anticipated, just in life. Whenever there's challenges or changes, it doesn't, having that kind of experience, and as negative in some ways as it was, it also, I think it built me stronger.
Yeah. And going to the whole, not having any experience, I've come across that in jobs that I've had that, and I was younger, and my frontal lobe probably wasn't even developed at the time. So I certainly didn't grasp it, but now I do, where like I was in the collision game with the parts, and we had, a lot of times, a lot of body guys would come out of that end, and then because this was cushy, I drive around in an air conditioned truck and deliver parts. I can do that. It's better than putting them on, right? They would never last. The guys they told us they didn't want body people. They didn't want collision repair people. They didn't want people. They wanted newbies. They wanted green people to sell their product. And I could never wrap my head around that. But now I get it, because sometimes you can know too much about an industry, maybe, and mess yourself up. You talked about being the only woman in that. I've heard you mention car sales Barbie. Do you want to get into that just real quick?
Yeah, it's kind of a funny story, because I say funny. It was something that at the time, again, I have to go back and say, this is a 22, 23-year-old that's working in a male dominated industry where I felt very aware that I, was told I didn't belong and I wasn't supposed to be there. And so, there were some games that sometimes they would try to play with my head, and some of it was, some of it got to me. Other days, it didn't get to me. But right from the jump. So when I first got to work there, I was blonde, and so they kind of started teasing me when I would come into work, and they would be like, "Oh, look, it's car sales Barbie," and would tease me for it. And at first, I didn't really take offense to it, and it didn't really bother me. But the more that it kind of played out, and they were, questioning my decisions or questioning my intelligence and continuing to talk down to me, it started to mess with my head. And so one of the things that I actually did, I went and cut my hair and dyed it dark, to try to differentiate, like, I know I need to be taken seriously, and this is, I cut like almost all my hair off, and I very much was wrestling with that as a young 20 something professional. I didn't want to be, to feel that way when I was coming into work. So I changed my appearance, and it still didn't matter at the end of the day. Those things I was still messed with, and there were all kinds of other stories that were, and some of it was not in good fun, but what it did for me is it started to shift in as I was becoming more of a professional, and after I got my first commission check, and I started to really see the possibilities of what the industry was and what car sales was. And I had a very narrow view. My whole frame of reference was, all right, salesperson, sales manager, finance manager, GM, like that was my world at that point. Those were the paths that I knew. And I was seeing these people that had been, at the dealership for a long time in sales management positions, and they would talk about their paychecks. And that to me was like, whoa, wait a minute. If these guys are acting like this to me, and if I apply myself, there's no reason why I couldn't be where they are or doing better than they're doing. And then that's almost, okay, you're going to play the games with me. Now I'm going to go and prove you wrong, and make a great living doing it. And so there was a point where this car sales Barbie, name, when I was met with it, at first it kind of made me feel undermined, and it made me feel insignificant, and it made me feel out of place. But there was a moment where it started to shift in my mind, and I realized, okay, well, this was Barbie. Barbie has always been, a character, a doll that in girls' toys, she could be anything. She was a gymnast. She was an astronaut. She had an airplane. She had a horse and cars and all kinds of stuff. Mm-hmm. And so I started thinking more about that. And it's like, well, wait a minute, actually, that's not, you're trying to use it to mess with my head, but it's actually empowering. And so, I dyed my hair back and was like, you know what? All right, we're going to lean into this more, and that's fine. And it actually became one of the strongest parts of my sales professional career, because one of the things that I would do when I got into internet sales, and it's funny now when you say internet sales because everything is that, but in the time, I had proven myself as, the retail taking ups person. So I had the opportunity to now get internet leads and sell that way. And I would make appointments with customers, and I would tell them, okay, so here you're going to, drive down this highway. When you pull in, you're going to look over and you're going to see this blonde woman standing there. That is me. And I'm going to be wearing, a bright outfit. So you can't miss me. And whatever I was wearing that day, I deliberately would start to dress, in colors that were easily spotted. And part of it was because I learned very quickly the way this dealership complex was set up. Each store was their own general manager, but we were right in between a Honda and a Chevrolet dealership. And I learned, again, trial by fire. I had one time where I had a customer coming in to look at a car, and they accidentally went to the Chevy store. And I, again, like, you don't necessarily think a customer's going to confuse like a Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep store, but they did. They went to Chevy. And when they walked in, the salesperson told them, oh, she went home sick for the day, so I'll help you. And, I was, again, trial by fire, called this customer about half an hour later. And they're like, well, wait a minute, this salesperson told us you had gone home sick. I said, no, I've been here, and I'm actually at this store. You're at the wrong location. And of course, the customer's like, well, we've already started, so if we don't do something, we'll get back to you. And they wound up buying the car there. Mm-hmm. So it taught me then, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be unforgettable. I'm going to make this is going to be my process from now on, because I'm not going to miss another opportunity. And I would be standing outside. It would be 2 minutes from the appointment time. And I would be calling the customer on my cell phone and say, hey, or where are you? I'm outside and I just want to make sure, because it's confusing when you pull in here. I just want you to make sure that you find me. And in one of those instances, the customer had arrived early at the wrong store, and same thing happened. Salesperson was like, hey, no, she's not, she's off. She went home sick. And the customer luckily I'd caught them before they'd actually really gone too far into the showroom. And so the customer started yelling at the salesperson, you lied to me. And then I said, all right, walk outside and look down the way. And of course you could spot me. So they were like, okay, there you are. So we're coming to you. So, it was a very cool evolution, from going from kind of an insult situation to actually being, that was a way for a customer to find me and relate to me to do business.
If it makes you feel any better, they size guys up too if you don't fit the mold. I was a long-haired musician trying to deliver parts in body shops, and let me tell you, I wasn't greeted with open arms either. Long hair this and slacker that, and but it feels good when you like you said, you take control of it, and I love being underestimated personally anyway, and then proving people wrong. I love proving myself wrong first, but then if you're throwing darts at me, I'm just going to work twice as hard to prove you wrong. It's my mom drilled into me as a kid, success is the best revenge. So, you want to talk about the BDC, the build from scratch, the island of misfit toys?
So the island of misfit toys, I want to explain that for a minute, because I think it really ties into what we've been talking about with the underdog perception, or somebody visually not fitting the mold of what traditionally is in retail automotive. So, one of the privileges I had was, working with the Scott Clark group, and I came on board to that dealership group in 2014 or 2015. And, one of the things that the owner of the stores had asked me to do when I came on board, he said, we want to build a BDC, and service BDC feels like it's the right focus. We've had some challenges with customer retention. The phone calls are ringing off the hook. We have a backstop service. It's supposed to be answering them, but it's creating more issues, and we just don't know what to do. We tried to hire some people on the drive that were service assistants to answer the phone, and it's, devolved into a whole other issue. And we just, that was my expertise. And so I was given the autonomy to build this department completely from scratch in this organization, which I was really excited about the prospect of. And so it was something that in late 2016, late 2015, early 2016, we began building the service BDC, and it started at the Scott Clark Toyota store and eventually encompassed all of the locations. We had a consolidated BDC there. Well, one of the things as the BDC continued to grow, and, I went from originally having about 3 staff that, first hired, to scaling it to 11, eventually, grew into the 20s. And so this department just continued to take over the top floor of this dealership, and we kept adding more and more components to it. It was really becoming very successful. And so, in 2018, I was recognized by Automotive News for 40 Under 40 for the results that I had been able to build in those 2 years with the service BDC, and some of the ways and the innovative, practices that built from scratch and put into place. And so, after I was recognized for that award, I started getting phone calls, and the owner of the store started getting calls from dealers that wanted to come out and see the BDC. And one of the things that I've always been this way. I don't care what somebody looks like. I don't care, how you wear your hair. I don't care if you have tattoos. I don't care if you have piercings. I want somebody that's going to care and that is personable. They really want to better themselves. They want to, continue to grow personally and professionally. And I wanted to have people that that met those criteria first. And so, it kind of broke the mold a little bit for what typically people would hire for a BDC position. A lot of the perception was, this needs to be women. Women talk better on the phone. Women are better communicators. So let's hire some women. And of course I had women in the department, but I didn't narrow it to that. I had individuals all over the age spectrum. I had people in their 70s and almost 80. I had people that were, straight out of high school that were 19 years old, and everywhere in between. They had been all kinds of different positions prior to coming into the service BDC. I had, people that, like you mentioned, I had musicians that were in some metal bands. So very, very much tattooed up and kind of intimidating looking. I had several employees that looked, and it actually had a gentleman. He really kind of looked like Yukon Cornelius, if you know Rudolph and that animated series. He was, about 6'3", red beard, just big, burly, Carolina looking gentleman. And we had everybody in between. And so one of the things that when we had somebody come and visit, the general manager made the comment, "Oh my gosh, this is like the island of misfit toys in here. Where did you find these people?" And I said, "That's actually the biggest compliment I think that you could probably give me, because I don't see, in automotive, there can be success in a variety of different capacities. And our customer base is so different. We have so many different people in the community that are from different cultures and different backgrounds, different ages. And so having a department where we mirror what's in our community, it was actually a strength." And so I had, people that spoke multiple languages. And so we would get, somebody that would ask the question, do you have somebody in the department that can, speak Spanish or another language or Greek? And the answer was yes. We had people that could. And I think it made our BDC so much more successful, because I didn't have that view in automotive, like these people have to fit the mold. They're on the phone talking to customers. And what I cared about is, did they care at the end of the day?
Perception is not always reality.
And, there's this perception that the dealerships are more expensive for everything. And InteliChek kind of confirms that that's not the case.
InteliChek helps dealerships become aware of where their prices stand in regard to their competitors.
And InteliChek does a good job of giving us that pricing data to confirm that we're in the market.
And this allows dealerships to make their customers aware of their competitive pricing.
I placed 2 placards in the business center so they could see that while they're over there working on computers. Also placed it in our coffee area. We have a glass wall there, so when they walk in, as they're putting their creamer and sugar in their coffee, they're going to look up and see the pricing for our pricing as well as our competitors.
Introducing InteliShare. InteliShare contains all of InteliChek's promotional tools that you can use to promote your favorable prices, including Intella Ads, the printable flyers that you can show off in easel displays, Intella Media for your digital media boards, and Intella Widgets, so you can show off price comparisons on your website and even let your customers schedule from the widget.
Just having access to that data that they're able to provide gives us a good plan of how we're going to proceed.
Call 877-827-7273 or go to InteliChek.com to find out more about how the InteliShare series can help you grow your business. The 40 under 40, being recognized like that, that has to be, what was the thought process going on? And how does that happen? Does someone nominate you? Or I don't even know how those things happen.
Yeah. So this was something that, automotive news, we know the publication in the industry. It's very well known, and I'd seen it on people's desks at the dealership. There's, somebody, the owner of the store would have a copy, waiting in the mail. I'd have, the service director at the store would get a copy, and And so, one of the things in borrowing issues, when someone was finished with it, I would want to catch up and read about what was going on in the industry. And so I saw the 40 under 40 when that publication came out. And so, in kind of a casual conversation with a couple of the service directors at the stores, I mentioned the comment, I don't really see anybody that's in BDC. Do you think that that's even something that they would consider? I didn't really know. And so they both nominated me. And that was something that I'm forever grateful to them for doing that, because it really was that critical moment, I think, in my career where it shined a light on BDC in a very positive way. It showed, what BDCs can really do for your customer retention and for your employees, and building out, an employee, pipeline in your organization, having someone go from BDC to being a service advisor, or going from BDC into sales, or even, the other way around. I had people that were service advisors that didn't want to be standing on their feet any longer and wanted to do something different. And I could mold them into somebody that could work in the BDC department. And so I think that moment, being recognized, it changed so many elements, within my professional life. And so it's something that, it opened my eyes to things beyond retail as well. And so I would say that was really the starting point, getting out into the broader industry.
Which leads us to 2020. 2020, I mean, that was a year. But Fixed Ops Roundtable, how did that come about?
Yes. So I had, after Automotive News 40 under 40, there was a conference, the Fixed Ops Journal Forum at that time. Automotive News had that conference as well. And so I was asked in 2019 to speak at that conference on BDC. And so that was my real first speaking opportunity, where I was on a stage and got to share my insights and put together a presentation. And it was really well received. And there was quite a bit of attendees there that I connected with afterwards. And one of the individuals who had been watching some of the happenings with the Fixed Ops Journal Forum, and he's always very supportive in the auto industry, Roger Conant. He was, very close with Ted Ings, and he introduced me. He reached out and said, there's a conference that's coming up, and it's the Fixed Ops Roundtable. It's going to be right in Vegas at NADA, and would you be open to connecting with Ted and speaking at this conference? And so when I went out to the first Fixed Ops round, this was my first Fixed Ops Roundtable. It was the fourth one that Ted had done at that time. And not only was I speaking on my own in my own section, or my own spot on the calendar, but then I also was part of these panels, and that was the first time I'd ever been included in a panel style format on stage. And so I met lots of different people in automotive doing those panels, like Liza Borges, David Long, and Glenn Lundy, and so many others. And that first Fixed Ops Roundtable for me, when I attended it in person, everything shut down shortly after that. This was February of 2020, and but even with that, all the chaos that was going on in 2020, behind the scenes, that format switched to a virtual format. And so I was able to continue to participate and continue to network with so many different people across the industry. So it's incredible just how much events and, social media and networking, just how many different doors it opens, and also just how many different perspectives you get the privilege to listen to.
Yeah, I'm fascinated with 2020. I'm fascinated with COVID, post-COVID, how it changed changed us all, obviously, but every industry. And I've said it on this podcast multiple times. I was in the grocery business, so we were on the front lines of the whole toilet paper thing and everything, and then you had like the blowback that and how you could see there was a shift. The Great Resignation, 2021. I mean, that's when I left to do this. I was planning this, but it just changes in so many ways. But you really couldn't script it better to go virtual for that type of thing, and totally just probably changed the whole. Of course, it was new then, but still, now Fixed Ops Roundtable, obviously you're at events, but it's anybody can watch anywhere, and that's, I don't know. I think it's a change for the better, by accident because of COVID and everything.
It really did, because, and here was, the other challenge was some of the in-person events. So at the time, prior to the roundtable in 2020, any of the events that I attended, most of them were in person. And so being able to step out of the dealership, that was a little bit challenging sometimes, because, you had a business to run, you had a department to run. And when you go to the ownership of a dealership and you say, hey, I'd like to go to this conference, or I've been asked to speak at this conference, the dealer kind of, there's a logical question there, which is, well, how much is it? What are you expected to pay? Are they asking you to speak and then you're, paying your own way? Are you going to try to expense it back to the dealership? Because that changes the answer to that question. And also, how long is the conference? How long are you intending to be gone? Yeah. So, there were things already, I think, in 2018, 2019, and, early 2020, where I was running up against some of those conversations where I had to be selective about what events I was going to attend, and I had to be selective about what opportunities I could do, because it was just not feasible for me to be outside of the dealership. But now having the ability to do things virtually, I think it opens up the opportunity for learning to anybody in an organization, and maybe people that, I think back to, early car sales Sarah in 2009. I can't imagine how much more empowering that would be to be able to find places online and learn about the industry. And so I think it's definitely, there were a lot of challenges in 2020, but the positive, having the ability to reach a larger network and include more people, I think is a big plus.
Yeah. 2022 Auto Success Magazine, Women at the Wheel, honoree.
Yeah.
What's that about?
That was really, a surprise. Auto Success Magazine, they had started to recognize women at the wheel. So recognizing women specifically in automotive that are making impacts across the industry. And, that being an honoree for that, it also connected me to other women in the industry that maybe I hadn't had a chance to get to know or hear about. So just the publications that take the time to recognize individuals, across the industry, I think it's such a positive, because there's so many different types of roles in across automotive. You have people that are working in the vendor partner side, you have people in dealerships, and sometimes, as big as the industry is, and also as small as it is, you don't know what's going on necessarily across all verticals. And so Auto Success Magazine did a really fantastic job of incorporating more acknowledgement for women in the industry, and specifically recognizing women that were making contributions on the vendor partner side and then also on the dealership side. And it's so that was a tremendous honor to be recognized in 2022.
Which brings us to today. And over the weekend, you made an announcement. Would you like to get into that?
Yes. So the Fixed Ops Roundtable, as we talked about, I've been involved since 2020 when my first event, and I've been involved in every single event since. I think one of the biggest privileges that I've had in being involved with it is I've seen this evolution not only in myself, but also, in how the roundtable continues to reach people. And so, at the time in 2020, I was the one being interviewed, and I was the one that was answering questions or sharing my expertise. It's shifted, over the years. And so as more and more people that I get to meet in the industry, and as I'm, connected to more and more individuals that are doing incredible things, both in the vendor partner space and in retail, one of the things that I've been, that Ted was so kind to give me the ability to do was sit on the other side of the table and be the person that was interviewing, or learning more and asking the questions of of the people that were going to be participating in the show. And so as things transitioned in my professional life, one of the things in talking with Ted, I really enjoyed participating in these events. Or this has been something that I feel like is more my wheelhouse, getting to shine the light on individuals that are making bigger impacts in the industry, getting to listen to thought leaders across their respective expertise. And so Ted approached me and asked if I would want to do this full time. And the answer is an astounding yes. So I'm very excited to announce that I'm now the vice president of the Fixed Ops Roundtable. I'm also going to be overseeing the certified partner program and the certified dealer program. So these are new recognitions that we've been working on for the last year, but giving acknowledgement to dealerships that are doing incredible things for their employees and for their customers, and they're using innovative best practices and how they execute technology across their stores and how they retain and grow their people. We wanted to recognize the dealers that are doing those incredible things. On the flip side, vendor partners, there's a lot of companies out in automotive, and sometimes it's hard for dealerships to know, okay, is this program really going to be the right fit for my stores? Is it really, what they're describing it to be? And so we wanted to also create a program where our advisory board can vet and look at companies, and there's a variety of different individuals that are part of this, but being able to have that stamp of approval on a company that yes, this has been vetted and looked at, and this is somebody that we as a collective feel is somebody that if a dealership is looking for this solution or this kind of product for their business, then this is somebody that they can trust. And this is somebody that would be a great asset to your organization and to your practices. So that's my latest announcement. I'm excited. It's been just a few short weeks since I've officially stepped into the role, but it'll be exciting to see how we continue to develop not only the roundtable, but also the certified program.
Awesome. This is for me. This is a little more of like how the sausage is made. Was it a hard transition when you went from the one being interviewed to doing the interview? Because, people who make it look easy, you just assume it's easy. But the whole camera thing, I've always dealt with chronic stage fright, but yet I was a musician. My mom used to say, well, you picked the wrong thing to try to do if you have chronic stage fright. Was it just a natural transition because you had done so many interviews, or, was there a learning curve there, or did you just pick it up?
Oh, no, it's totally a learning curve. So I think, and I'm still learning. I am definitely, and I describe it similarly to how I've approached really everything in my career so far. Everything that I've ever done is always a learning opportunity. And so at the conclusion of any segment, at the conclusion of anything I've ever been on, I always want to watch it back and see. And sometimes, if I look back at some of my early virtual events when I'm sitting at my desk in the dealership and I have my laptop and it's like shooting up my nose, and there's all those like camera things that you catch that you didn't think about at the time. And so, you watch it back and you're like, oh, why did I go in the conference room? The lighting in there is terrible. It's just all fluorescent. I have a big shadow on my face. And And so there were things like that just over time, learning and observing. And one of the other pieces that I've found a lot of opportunity to learn within, you mentioned, going to the other side. So it's not a natural thing for me either. I'm naturally more of I think an intuitive or a little bit more reserved. I like to be the person that kind of has my back to the wall in a room, and I just kind of observe people. And so I'm not naturally extroverted, but of course, being in car sales, you have to get over that and be a little more extroverted. And so I think there were elements that just over the course of building out my career, it broke me out of my shell a little bit more and allowed me the personal growth to be able to feel comfortable standing in front of people or be comfortable asking questions. And so, from the transition of being the one that was being asked the questions, sometimes I felt like that was a lot more challenging because there's so much I want to say, but I have to be mindful of the time that I need to say it. And so thinking through those answers, I found a lot more challenging. The flip side, when asking the questions to somebody, I want to make sure that I'm painting the person in the best light and making them comfortable in the conversation. And so that's something that I think in my sales experience and my just experience in communications with BDC, that's been part of my job for the last decade plus, is making people feel comfortable in conversations and making people feel like this is, a trusted, safe space to share what opinions they have or share their thoughts. And so I've enjoyed it tremendously, though, because every single conversation, I get to take away something I've learned from the individual I'm talking to. And so I've really enjoyed being on the other side of the table.
Yeah, I was going to say the car sales thing. Steve Jobs famously talked about connecting the dots from your past and how, of course, it's almost like a Captain Obvious thing where the person you are now is all the things that you've done up until then. But when you're thrown in the fire like that, two things when I was in the automotive game, like in the trenches, being on the phones made me a better speaker, communicator. And I did not, I played music and I sang, but I did not talk into a mic because I couldn't do it. But I'm still pulling from those experiences. And then driving around on the route, I listened to a ton of like talk radio and like a lot of storytelling radio. And I still use all those experiences to make a podcast episode now. And that was me at the time thinking I was just driving in circles in West Tennessee, delivering car parts, but, yeah, it's funny how we just build on all those things. We had an internet snafu on my end. I knew mine was, but I don't think
it looks like it's good now. It says 99%. So
yeah. Did you want to talk about your website? That's new, right? Because you're still building that out. Do you want to get into that?
Yeah, I'm still building that out. So yeah, I thought about putting together a website. So some of the things that I want to continue to offer in automotive, of course, BDC is my passion. It's something that it's near and dear to my heart, but I also have a lot of experience across, other facets in automotive. BDC though is always, my biggest focus in dealerships, and I'll continue to be an advocate for increasing communications with customers and dealerships and having better processes and better ways to communicate with individuals. So I've built a personal website, so saravantine.com. One of the things that I also have been working on in the last few years, and I'm a mom of 3, so when I say working on, it's where I can try to fit it in, and I try to strategically block myself time to focus on it, but life comes up. So sometimes it has to take a backseat to other things going on. But I've, in addition with my personal website, I'm wanting to put out a book as well. And so I've been working on that. And a lot of the lessons, within that book, I'm going to really be focusing on communication, and then also just more about my specific experience in automotive and the lessons that I've learned through the course of my career so far.
Awesome. Yeah, I saw that on the site and I was like, I'm going to ask her about this. I'm sure she maybe doesn't want to talk too much about it. You don't want to let the cat out of the bag?
I have some working titles. I don't want to
That's what I was gonna
commit
ask.
to it quite yet, but I'm about 75% done. But it's I'm meticulous. So one of the things that I always find myself in my writing, I'll hammer out some thoughts, and then you go back and read it 2 weeks later, and you're like, why did I say that? Like, what was that? That was not necessarily cohesive as I would like. So about 75% done, and trying to figure out right now. I've never published a book. I've never thought about publishing a book, but it's something that I, again, going back into my history, in art history, I had to write a lot, and I loved writing, talking about different elements of history and all of those pieces. So writing is something that I've always been very passionate about and do. If people read my LinkedIn page, you can probably see how many times I pull together, writing of, and just thinking about personal and professional intersections between, my life as a mom and as an equestrian, and then also my automotive professional career. So, putting this into thoughts for a larger book, it's been a challenge. But I'm looking forward to getting it across the finish line. I'm going to shoot for early 2025 to get it out, but it's a work in progress. So I'm, again, trial by fire, learning what to do and what not to do.
Yeah. Self-publish, or are you working with someone?
Honestly, right now, that's the part that I'm still trying to wrestle with, because I've never self-publishing. There's things that I'm trying to find out and learn about in that avenue, and like what's best. Is it Amazon? What's the best way to distribute it? But then, I've had other individuals that have told me, you want to work with a publisher. It's just, they're going to know things and be able to help guide you in that conversation. So those are still the elements that I'm trying to tackle. So if anybody is an expert in that, I am all ears. Would love to hear your insights on it.
I don't know if you picked Ed Roberts' brain, but I'm sure he has some.
Yes, he's one I'm going to be talking extensively with about his experience.